Now you will hear one of the most beautiful parables of Taoism. Reflect on it. A Taoist man named Xingzu raised fighting roosters for Emperor Swan. He was training a very fine bird. After a few days, the emperor asked if the rooster was ready to fight. The trainer replied, "Not yet, as it is still furious. It is willing to start a fight with any other rooster it sees. It appears conceited and too sure of itself." 10 days later, the emperor inquired again, and the trainer answered, "Not yet." It gets angry as soon as it hears another rooster crow. 10 days more passed, and the trainer responded, "Not yet." It still has that fierce look and fluffs up its feathers. After another 10 days, the trainer said, "Now it is almost ready." When it hears another rooster crow, it doesn't even blink. It remains still as a piece of wood. It is a mature fighter. Other roosters will catch sight of it and run away. Now let us delve deeper into this beautiful parable. First of all, it's important to know that in China and Japan, in the Far East, various things have been used as vehicles for meditation, archery, painting, fencing, even breeding fighting roosters. No matter the aspect of life, they have used it to carry out inner instruction. When Xingzu was asked by the emperor to train a rooster for him, the emperor was interested in the fight, in the competition, and, of course, he was concerned that his rooster would win. Our egos fight, even through roosters. We use everything for the ego. They have even corrupted games. Now nobody is interested in the games themselves, but in how to win them. That is the difference between play and a match. In play, one is interested in the game itself. It's the typical child's play. The game is great, and if you can turn your life into a game, then it will be something wonderful. In a match, you're not interested in the game itself, but in the final outcome, in how to win. And when you're interested in how to win, then you destroy the game. It stops being a game and becomes a business. From the beginning, Xingzu had one kind of interest in training the rooster, and the emperor had another. He was interested in the fight, and the trainer in something more. In the parable, it said the emperor asked Xingzu if the rooster was ready to fight. He replied, "Not yet, as it is furious. It is willing to start a fight with any other rooster it sees. It appears conceited and too sure of itself." Now, the emperor could have said, "But that is precisely what I need, because when you fight someone and you are furious, that's when you have the most chance of winning." Xingzu says, "It is always ready to fight. That means it is scared. So, it is not ready yet. How can you be ready to fight when you are scared?" Now, let's look at the different minds. The logic of the mind would say that if you are furious and ready to fight everyone, then you can become a great warrior. You are ready. What are you waiting for? If you are furious, fight, because if you wait too long, the fire might go out. The energy might decline. But with the no mind, it's all different. The setup is different. The man of no mind says, "How is it ready to fight at any moment?" It's not prepared yet, because when one is ready to fight at any moment, it means one is a coward. Fighting is nothing but a cover-up. You want to prove that you are brave, but that desire to prove means you are not what you want to prove. A wise man will never look for ways to prove it. Instead, a fool will always be looking for ways to show that he is wise. A man who is in love, who has become love, will not try to prove that he is in love. When you are not in love, that's when you try to prove it in many ways. You give gifts, you talk about love, but all those efforts only prove the opposite. If you really love a person, you wouldn't even mention the fact that you love her. If the other person cannot understand your love without words, then that love is worthless. If you have to express it in words, it means something is false. Ask the so-called therapists, and they will say that although it might not interest you, tell your wife every morning that you love her. Don't forget to repeat it whenever you get the chance. When you pass by, repeat it again. Make it your mantra. They are right, yes, because your wife depends on words. You also depend on words. That's why whenever do people fall in love at the beginning, they always talk a lot about love. They are poetic, and there's a sense of romance and dreaming in the air. But when this diminishes because it cannot continue at the same level forever, everything seems foolish. And at the moment it starts to seem foolish, they begin to feel that something is wrong. Now there is no love because their love depended only on words. Initially, it wasn't there. You talked about it, but it wasn't there. Your chatter was nothing but a cover-up. This is something you do continuously in your life, in all dimensions. These therapists seem to be right. They have a pull. Their books sell all over the world, millions of copies, only second to the Bible in terms of sales. But I tell you, be careful with therapists circulating out there because they make you increasingly fake. Then you stop being authentic. There's no need to say love or I love you. Let your whole being say it. If you love, achieve it with your whole being, and words won't be necessary. It will express itself according to how you say it, the way you move, the way you look. Your whole body will express it. Love is such a vital phenomenon that it cannot be hidden. Has anyone ever been able to hide their love? It burns so intensely inside that it radiates brightness. Whenever someone is in love, it shows on their face, in their eyes. They are no longer the same person. Something in them has transformed. There is a fire burning, a new fragrance manifesting. They dance instead of walk, and when they speak, their words carry a poetic scent. And not just with the beloved when you are in love, your whole being is transformed. You are different even when talking to a stranger on the street. And if that stranger has known love in their life, they will know that you are in love. You cannot hide love. It is nearly impossible. No one has ever succeeded in hiding love. But when it doesn't exist, you have to project it, and then you have to pretend. In the parable, the trainer says, "Not yet, as it is still furious." That shows it is afraid. Why else would it be furious? To whom do you show your fury? What need is there for it? Fire inside, fire outside, that is the projection. The parable continues. It appears conceited and too sure of itself. When you appear too sure of yourselves, remember that what is hidden is something you are trying to say with "I am sure of myself." If you truly had confidence, there would be no need to announce it, not only to others, but to yourself. Everyone continuously repeats, "I am sure of myself." Why? What are they hiding? If that confidence and security you talk about so much were really there, it wouldn't be necessary to talk about it. A truly secure person is not someone who is aware of it. This point has to be well understood. When something is false, you are aware of it. You are self-conscious. When something is real, you forget about it. Do you remember to breathe? Yes, if something goes wrong, if it's hard to breathe and there's something wrong with your lungs and you're sick with a cold or suffer from asthma, then you become conscious of breathing. But when everything is fine, nobody is conscious of anything. When you are sure of yourself, you forget about confidence. You also say, "I love you totally." What does that totally mean? Have you ever heard of any love that is not total? Love is total. Why repeat the same word? Because deep inside, you know it's not. And if you don't say it, who will say it for you? If it were truly total, everyone would know it. Total love is a transfiguration. A total love is a death, a new life. Total love doesn't need anyone to say anything about it. I heard about a great wine taster once. A friend invited him over because he had some very valuable and aged wines and wanted to show off his collection, hoping for the man's recognition. He offered one of his most prized wines. The wine taster tasted it and remained silent, not even saying it was good. The friend felt hurt. Then he offered a very cheap and ordinary wine, and the taster sang its praises, calling it very, very good, fantastic. The friend was perplexed and said, "I am stunned. I gave you one of the most select and valuable wines, and you said nothing. Yet in front of this ordinary coarse wine, you say it's very good." The expert replied, "As for the first, no one needs to say anything. It speaks for itself. As for the second, someone must say something in its favor, otherwise it would feel hurt. When you say, 'I trust absolutely,' you know there is no absolute trust. That's why you say it. You might not be aware of it, but be mindful and use words carefully." In the parable, it is said, "It is willing to start a fight with any rooster it sees. It appears conceited and too sure of itself." You can observe this in your own life too. It's something that happens all the time. You're always ready to fight with anyone, always waiting for the chance, some excuse. Suddenly someone steps on your toe and the fight starts. Why are you so ready? Simply because you are internally agitated, because you know that you are nobody. So, if someone steps on your toe, you jump up, saying, you don't know who you are dealing with. That's something you don't know yourself. The parable continues. After 10 days, the emperor asked again, and the trainer replied, "Not yet." It gets angry as soon as it hears another rooster crow. The emperor kept insisting because the day of the competition was approaching and his rooster had to win. And the man kept delaying with excuses that seemed absurd. Whenever there's a man of the way involved, his arguments seem absurd, and they are because they don't fit into your schema. 10 days later, he still says, "Not yet." It gets angry as soon as it hears another rooster crow. It is still immature, childish. That is not the behavior of a warrior. Those are the ways of a coward. That is not the behavior of a fearless man, of a fearless rooster. It is not. Those are not the ways of someone who has no fear. Now there are people who consider the world as an enemy. If you consider the world as an enemy, it means that deep inside, you haven't found the source. Otherwise, the world would be seen as a hospitable place. Dissonance is now the prominent note, and friendship the exception. And you never know. You can't even trust a friend because you are closer to animosity. Now a little anecdote. It turns out a man named Taoist was appointed as a justice of the peace. It's something necessary because there are very harmful people around. If they are very, very harmful, then they are made governors. If they are still more so, they are sent abroad as ambassadors. If they are only harmful at a local level, then they are made justices of the peace. They have to be given something to occupy themselves so they don't have too much free time to engage in mischief. Taoist was a troublemaker, but not much, not a big fish, just a local small fry, so they made him a justice of the peace. He turned his living room into a courtroom, hired a clerk and a watchman. Got up early in the morning and waited, but nobody showed up. By evening, he was desperate and said to the clerk, "Not a single case, no murder, no robbery, no crime. If things continue like this is going to turn into a very boring job. I thought it was going to be very lively, but not even a traffic fine has happened." The clerk replied, "Don't be depressed. Trust in human nature. Something will eventually happen, you'll see." I still trust in human nature. What kind of human nature was the clerk talking about? He affirms that he still has enough confidence to know that something will eventually happen, saying wait and see how something happens. Your courts, judges, and governments depend on you, on your nature. All this nonsense works because of you, and the basis of all this is that you are always ready to fight. If society became more natural, the government would eventually disappear. It is a sickness. Courts will disappear. The police are there because there are criminals, and the whole structure is maintained only because of one thing, because you are always ready to fight. The government exists because of your ego. If you abandon the ego, all politics falls apart. Politics exists because of the ego. The parable continues. Xingzu says, "Not yet." It still has that fierce look and ruffles its feathers. It's becoming quieter, growing more mature, but it's still not ready because it still has that fierce look and ruffles its feathers. Deep in its unconscious, it's still willing to fight. On the surface, it's calming down and becoming tranquil, but if another rooster passes by, it still looks at it fiercely. Now, it's not conscious, it's unconscious, but it's growing. Now, the fighting has moved out of its conscious mind, but the unconscious hasn't let go of it yet. After another 10 days, the trainer said, "Now it's almost ready." When it hears another rooster crow, it doesn't even blink. It remains still as a piece of wood. It is a mature fighter. Other roosters will catch sight of it and run away. When the fighter is mature, it has no need to fight. When the warrior is truly there, lacking fear, why fight? Its very presence will be enough. Roosters will run away, and so it happened. The rooster went out to fight and stood there. The other roosters arrived, making many boasts, jumping out of the ring, full of ego, arrogant and vain. But then they saw this rooster. This rooster had an abnormal look, as if it wasn't from this world. It stood there like a Buddha. They tried to make it angry, but it didn't even blink. They jumped, they crowed, but nothing seemed to affect it. Then they began to tremble. This rooster isn't natural. This rooster is strange, not of our kind. They realized that this rooster was neither brave nor cowardly. It simply had no fear. And whenever there is a being that lacks fear, the other must run away. That is the same training that follows a Zen warrior, a samurai. He himself must fight, but without anger. That seems difficult because even love is done with anger, and yet he must fight without it. There's a subtle story that happened during the life of Omar, the great Muslim caliph, with an enemy for 30 years. The enemy was very strong, and the struggle lasted a lifetime of war. Finally, one day, the opportunity came. The enemy fell from his horse, and Omar jumped on him with his spear. It would have taken just a second for the sword to pierce the man's heart, and everything would have been over. But in that small moment of time, the enemy did one thing. He spat in Omar's face, and the spear stopped its path. Omar touched his face, stood up, and told the enemy, "Tomorrow we start again." The enemy was perplexed and said, "But what's the matter? I've been waiting for this moment for 30 years, and you two have been waiting for 30 years. I've been hoping with the hope that someday I'd be above your chest with my spear, and it would all end. That opportunity never came to me, but you could have finished me in an instant." "What happened to you?" Omar replied. "This hasn't been a normal and ordinary war. I made a Sufi oath that I would fight without anger. For 30 years, I've been fighting without anger, but anger appeared for just an instant when you spat. Just in that moment, I felt angry, and everything became personal. I wanted to kill you, the ego appeared. During these 30 years, there was no problem. We fought for a cause. You weren't my enemy. There was nothing personal. I wasn't interested in killing you, just that the cause would win. But just now, for a moment, I forgot the cause. You were my enemy, and I wanted to kill you. That's why I can't kill you, so tomorrow we'll start again." The enemy of Omar said, "Now teach me, be my master, and let me be your disciple. I too would like to fight without anger. The secret lies in fighting without the ego, and if you can fight without ego, then you can do anything without ego because the fight is the climax of the ego. If you can do that, then you can do it in any situation. But right now, You can't even love without ego. So that is the training of a samurai, of a Zen warrior, to fight without ego, like the rooster. Now it's almost ready. Remember the words almost ready because not quite. Because Tao says that the perfect cannot exist in this world, only the almost perfect. The moment you are perfect, you disappear. Perfection cannot exist in matter, in the material. The very matter provides part of the imperfection. You can't be in a body and be perfect. Something will always be missing, and that little bit that is missing is the missing link. That's why you can be in the body. Once you are perfect, you disappear. A perfect man simply vanishes because he is so perfect that matter cannot hold him. He is so perfect that the body cannot contain him. He is so perfect that he cannot take any form in this imperfect world. Thus, the trainer said, "Now it's almost ready." How could it be more ready? This seems to be the ultimate when it hears another rooster crow. It doesn't even blink. What more perfection can be asked for? It remains still as a piece of wood. Can there be more perfection? It is a mature fighter. The other roosters will catch sight of it and run away. Can there be more perfection? It is possible. It remains there immobile as a piece of wood. Perhaps it doesn't even blink. Perhaps the other roosters will run away and it will win the fight. But it is still not perfect because it is, and everything it does through effort. That's why it's imperfect. It has been trained to do it this way, and now it's ready. It will do it, but deep down inside, it's still the old rooster. There will still be a slight tremor. It cannot be detected. No one can detect it from the outside. It will be a perfect saint, but inside, it's still the usual rooster at the core of its being. That's the problem. You can practice religion, and you can practice a lot, up to almost perfect, but almost perfect is still imperfect, and you have to be absolutely perfect. What is absolute perfection? When you let go of the learned, the effort, the simple is the right way, and in this rooster, there is still effort. It is doing it. It has been trained, disciplined. Religion is not a discipline. It's not something that should be practiced. It's something to flow with, to let go in. It's not something that should be forced. It shouldn't be reached from the outside by forcing. It has to come from within and let it flow outward. It must be something spontaneous. Then what is to be done? If you just wait for spontaneity, it seems like it will never come. If you practice, you might become something like the rooster, good for fighting, good for the other, but for yourself, you remain the same. That's what has happened to so many so-called saints. Their holiness still has effort. They tend to it, and whenever you tend to something, that thing stops being authentic because the opposite is still there somewhere in the unconscious. It can manifest at any time, and if you relax, it will. Now, if you say a tree is God, and you repeat it, there will come a time when it will start to seem like God. But that God is false. You've imposed it. It's a projection. Look at the tree in silence. You don't need your God in the tree. The tree is sufficiently God itself. It doesn't need you to impose your God on it. Remain silent with the tree, and gradually, as you deepen into silence, you will see that the tree is transforming. And one day, you will realize that everything is divine, and no one can take that divinity away from you. It will not be something practiced, but something felt. The real does not happen through words, but through silence. And that rooster trainer says now the rooster is almost ready because it has practiced. It has been forced. That's why so many of the so-called saints are completely ready, trained. They are good at demonstrations, but deep down are not good for much. A truly wise person is one who lives with spontaneity. All their experience lacks mental projection. What can be done at first? You must practice, or else spontaneity will not appear. You have pushed it to such depths that it might not emerge, not unfold in consciousness. So what can be done? First, practice and practice so totally that you reach a point where it can be said that now you are almost ready. Then the next step is to drop all practice and see what happens. If you let go of practice, then the old will appear again. Be a witness and watch it. If you can watch, it will eventually empty itself out without needing to do anything. Your practice tries to push the spring to the end, to push the spring to its maximum. What happens next? Try it with a spring. Push it to the maximum and then let go. Not only does it unroll, but it will jump. That's what happens if you practice with your whole being. You'll never reach perfect, but you can reach as close as possible. Your mind, like the spring, is pushed against a wall, and you keep pushing and pushing. All those meditations I tell you to do are just to push the mind against the wall to the limit. And when you see that the spring can no longer be compressed, that it doesn't retract any further, then you are almost ready. And I'll tell you, let go of the spring. Not only will it unroll, but it will jump away from you. Once the mind jumps away from you, you will be free of it. Then no more practice is needed. Then you just live moment by moment, celebrating, giving thanks, moment by moment, joy and ecstasy, moment by moment. This approach to spiritual practice emphasizes the journey from effort to effortlessness, from conditioning to spontaneity. It suggests that true mastery, whether in training a rooster for combat or in navigating the spiritual path, is about reaching a state of uncontrived, natural being, a state where actions no longer come from a place of fear or desire to prove something, but from a deep, inherent stillness and understanding. The culmination of practice is not in the perfection of action, but in the transcendence of the need for action, where true peace and understanding reside. This journey requires deep observation, letting go of attachments, and ultimately finding freedom from the very practices that aid in reaching that freedom.